Hello, it's Amy with Paper Moon Journals, and today I have a fun Merry Monday project to share with you. Normally, I share these on TikTok since I'm on her TikTok design team, but I accidentally, whoops, shared it in the YouTube orientation, so I get to share it with you all here. I have some typed up instructions that if you paused, you could get a screenshot of that and save it for yourself. I'll also have it available for a couple dollars in my Etsy shop if you'd like to do that. It just makes it easier. You don't have to write everything down. I'll also pop up the measurements of everything on the screen. I'll show you on the screen and pop up some of the digitals that I got from the Twisted Paper Studio shop, the antique flower fussy cuts I cut into cards. I also use the religious French prayer cards, the fragment in time labels, and then the French toile tag kit. Those are all digital kits that I used by Twisted Paper Studios. And thank you so much for inviting me to collaborate with that. I make these instructions for myself when I make these things so that it's not so hard to remake them. I always refer back to my instructions. So the first two pieces we need are 8 by 10 and 10 1/4 by 7 3/4. I'm starting with the width by the height. On this plain paper, it doesn't matter. But when we're using patterned papers, it does matter when I'm giving the width or the height first so that the images come out upright on your instructions. You could also use digitals printed onto card or scrapbooking paper that already had pattern or design. I just thought this would be fun. I like just using plain cream basic cardstock for stuff. And this is a way you can make it more interesting. We could also have gotten some gesso and rolled a little bit of gesso on here or blotted some gesso on. I didn't want to wait for it to dry. I wanted to be able to do the video without waiting for things to dry or getting my heat gun out. So this is a great way. And I have another side. The stamp I'm using is one that I got from Graphic 45. I believe they sell it on their website. When they were first released, it came free with order while supplies lasted. It was so exciting for me because it told me that there weren't enough and that I wasn't going to get one. And then there was one in my box anyway. So wasn't that a nice surprise? I like using it, and this is the way I use it. It's a nice background stamp. I'll also use that other side that has the diamond pattern on it. I think this looks good. I think we're ready to start cutting it to shape. Let's start with our 8 by 10 piece and glue that shut in half. I like to use glue stick, but you use the adhesive of your choice. I do prefer glue stick because it doesn't warp the paper as badly as if I used wet glue, and I'm just too stingy to use my double-sided tape for that. So if we take our 8 by 10 piece and we fold it in half the hot dog way, the long way, you can see I'm not actually scoring anything, even though my written instructions will say score, but I wasn't actually scoring that there. And then just the glue stick. The trick with the glue stick is you need to get it on here really thick so that it kind of squeezes out a little, and of course get it all the way up to the edges. And if you get it on here really thick and glue it shut, you will not be able to pick this apart later. It soaks into both sides of the paper, and I really like the effect, and I haven't had any problems. I have quite a few journals I made many years ago, and they're just as sturdy, the things I made this way, as the things, as everything else. So you need to, the other trick is it needs to be burnished down really good. So I just use the bottom of the glue stick container to burnish it down. Then I want to decorate one side of this. You don't need to do this for contrast to make it more interesting. So I'm going to use this sheet music, this piece of sheet music. I could use either side. I go back and forth, but I think ultimately I decided the side with the with the actual printed sheet music on it instead of the cover was the side I want. And I'm actually tearing it so that it sits on there crooked instead of sitting on there straight. You do it the way you like it. I wanted torn edges and I wanted it to have that old-fashioned look. So I used my glue stick to glue that on as well. And then I have my corner chomper because this is pretty thick to chomp the corners. I like rounded corners on this project. It just gives it a more polished look. And I refer to the instructions to see where the score marks are. I'll put those on screen for you here. We're working on the outside cover, so we want to score that at 2 3/4, 2 7/8, 7.5, and 7 5/8. You can either mark it with a pen and use your ruler and a butter knife, or if you have the scoring tool, it makes it a lot easier. I know for at least a year, I resisted doing anything or even watching videos that included using a scoring tool because I thought, oh, that's just too much trouble. That's too hard. It makes everything so much easier. And with the cutter on it, I can also use it as like a portable cutter when we go camping. I don't have to drag my big one. Although if I want to cut chipboard or something like that, I definitely need to bring the big one. Not that it's designed to cut chipboard. It dulls my blade almost immediately. As soon as I change the blade, I cut chipboard on it a couple times. That's it. The blade's done for. Now that I think about it, I should maybe get a separate paper cutter and dedicate it just for cardstock. As much as I make, just so I could have nice sharp cutting on my paper edges. I kind of like that it chomps through my paper, my dull cutting blade on my cutter. I think it gives it a nice deckled edge effect. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of the top edge of the inside of our centerpiece is what it's called in the instructions. So I thought we could use the diamond pattern here. You'll see after I score it and get it folded up how we can kind of see that so that this creates a two-sided effect for us. Let me get out my scoring board again. And I'll put up on the screen how we're going to score this as well. We score it hot dog first. So we scored it 3.5 inches first to create pockets, and then we rotate it and score it at 2 7/8 and 6 5/8. After we get this scored and fold it at the score lines, at these score lines of the 2 7/8 and the 6 5/8, we'll want to cut those score line out so that we have a gap between the pockets. And then if you want to notch out the top of the pockets, this is where your 1-inch circle punch comes into play. You could use almost any size, really. Just if you want it to look like the one I'm making here, I'm using a 1-inch circle punch. And then just notch out lightly all 3 of the pockets. And see, now you can see how it looks with the stamping that we did. Or if you were using double-sided scrapbooking paper, that would be nice too. I like the kind of grungy handmade look of these. Goes really nicely with the vintage style of the digitals that we're using here. I printed the digitals on cardstock as well. Lightweight white cardstock. The labels, the tags, everything. I printed out and then I inked the edges with vintage photo on those. And then now I have out the distressed oxide in black. So I've got the pocket pieces out. We'll need to score these on 3 sides. I'm scoring them at a 1/2 inch. Get my scoring board out again. And I just line it up with one of the numbers and then find a 1/2 inch away from that is how I do it on my board. I do this 3 times and then we cut the corners out. You could also miter the top edge of the flap, but it doesn't matter. I don't find that I notice any difference if I miter it again. And it would make that side flap really tiny for these pockets are so small. I probably would if they were bigger pockets, maybe. So now that we have our 3 pockets made, all 3 of the pockets are different sizes because they're going on, 3 different sized pieces. So the smallest pocket goes on the smallest piece and so forth. Once I have the pockets on, I've decided that I want to decorate them with some sheet music. Again, you could use book page. We could have used some of the cover. We could, if we're using scrapbooking paper, we could use more scrapbooking paper here instead of just plain cardstock. This is 12 by 12 cardstock. I get mine from Hobby Lobby because it's the store nearest to me where I can go pick stuff up in person. I know exactly what I'm getting. I can get more of this and it'll be exactly the same color. This is the manila I have left from other projects. Okay, so again, I wanted the torn, kind of rustic, shabby look. So that's what I did. If you don't like that, cut your edges. And then I like rounded corners. So I'm going to use my corner chomper here and chomp through all the corners. Then I'll ink up the edges with that distressed oxide ink that I have. Oh, not on the center, actually. I decided to leave that not inked. Again, you can do it the way you want it. But I do end up inking around the edges of the outer cover. And then for these sheet music pockets, I folded over about a 1/2 inch on the top of each one and then glue that just to reinforce the lip of the pocket. And then glue that down in a U shape to make a pocket on the left and right flaps of our center piece. And that's almost it. We're pretty much done here. You could also use Velcro closure. I know the first one that I made of these, I made a Velcro closure. Since I'm using scrapbooking paper, I'm going to use 2 circles each. I think in my instructions, I said to put 3 together. You could still do that. It might be thick and kind of hard to punch through the way I'm going to do it if you had 3 pieces. When I was using 3 pieces, I was just using copy paper weight paper, 20-pound paper, not this cardstock. So I used 3 pieces. But this way it's called a policy closure. It's the kind where you have the 2 rings and the string that attach the 2 together. And then I decided that I didn't like the manila on manila look of those. So then we do end up having 3 circles, as it turns out. The instructions were right. I'm going to add some sheet music. This time I'm going to use the side that looks like the sheet music cover instead of the side that was had the music notes and everything on it. I like lining it up and just punching it all through at once. It's pretty thick. My hole punch didn't like it. And then after the fact, I covered up where the brads come out with just a tiny little scrap of, oh, yeah, here I am doing it right now. There's just a tiny little scrap. And it's okay with me that it looks messy, the grungy. This is the look I'm going for. So if you don't like that look, you probably want to add this piece before you glue the sheet music down retroactively. Go back in time. Or you could just take a bigger piece of sheet music so that it doesn't look so messy to cover that up. You could use a fussy cut image. I know actually after I finished making, was it this one or I think it was another one that I made that I just made pretty neutral like this, the base of it. And then I didn't decorate it. I left it empty. And then the project I'm working on now, I just added fussy cuts to different places. I definitely used fussy cuts to hide the brads that went through on the inside, the top and bottom. And then so it decorated it and it served 2 purposes. I've got just embroidery thread here. I wish I had taken the time to go find something else, some smaller string or twine. It's not really the color I want. And when I ink up the outside edge, I actually run that through the black ink and darken that up a little. But this to me is really fun. Is it the most fun part? I don't know. But putting the tags and everything in. Once I've made it and created all the pockets, now I get to fill the pockets and decorate it. And that's really fun for me. I like doing that. I think I might leave this one a little more neutral and less decorated so that I could change themes, add it to whatever I'm making. If I'm making a fairy, because botanical goes with everything in my mind. And then everything but like snow, probably. So this one, I want to make it a little bit shorter because it's got the top flap to contend with. I'm going to put that in the center pocket. I meant to put it in behind that pocket. I don't know. It fits in there just fine. I didn't need to cut it down anyways. Oh, there's that one I cut down. I'll use that in one of these other pockets. I thought it was going to fit. I was pretty sure it was going to fit. It's not going to fit. And I already inked the edges of all of these things with Vintage Photo. I don't have that over here, and we're not going to get it. That little prayer card fits in this little pocket just right. And we have all these little labels that I printed on card. I knew those would fit in the small pockets. That's fun. I find that really satisfying. You could also use these same labels that I'm tucking in the pockets to decorate the pockets instead of sheet music. I'm going to cut another one of these down to fit in this pocket on the end. There. What do you think? Is it done? Should we call it done? Well, let's tie it all up and see what we think. If we want to add anything else to it. So I just like to wrap it around and around clockwise. If I get any more complex with it, then later I can't figure out what I want to do. I have a lot of ephemera left. Actually, let's open it back up and see how much more we can pack in here. I bet we can get a lot more in here. And now that I'm editing and I'm looking at it kind of over my shoulder, it looks like those prayer cards would decorate those little sheet music pockets would be cute. You could probably use some of the prayer cards or ephemera to make more pockets on the top and bottom flap if you wanted. I'd recommend making them left or right pockets. Left or right facing pockets so that the stuff doesn't fall out when you flip the flap up and down. It's taken me a few years to figure that one out. But yeah, when you put a pocket on a flap that goes up and down, you don't want an upward or downward facing pocket, really, unless it's really snug. You don't want a gusseted pocket, though, probably. And of course, you do it the way you like it. I do what I like. Maybe you will. So I'll use one of these labels to add a little pocket on top of this. And then we have a place to use more ephemera. See, more pockets means room for more stuff. That covers up too much. It's a little better. And then maybe a couple labels in there. Maybe we can layer up some of the other pockets. Let's do that again. Yeah, I like how that looked. Let's make it a sideways pocket, a left facing pocket this time. This way we can still see the sheet music. And then it makes our little project so much more interesting just by using some of the ephemera to add more pockets. Layered pockets. You just learned something. Layered pockets. I like it. Okay, I'm going to call it done now, although I will finish decorating it with whatever more specific theme I have later. But it's ready to glue into a project. Or actually, I didn't ink it up yet. So let's ink it up. I keep thinking I'm done, and then you can always do more. You have to pick a time to stop. But first, I'm going to darken that rainbow thread that I used just because it was out, really. If I use it, I don't have to put it away, is what I was thinking. If I just use up that last little bit of thread hanging out on the table there, it won't need to be put away. And then that way I also didn't have to go try to find or decide on a coordinating thread. I had some twine I wanted to use, but it was way too thick. Embroidery thread is just the right weight for something like this. You want to make sure to knot the ends, though, so it doesn't come unwound. Waxed linen thread, like I used to sew in journal signatures. That would probably be good to tie this up. I tried tying one with some fine lace that I used to on bows on my tags and things. That is too bulky. I left it on there, but I a little bit regret it and still might go back and change it out. But I'm pretty happy with the project. I'd like to know if you're following along with the Merry Mondays here on YouTube. That would be great. If you make this project, please tag me in it because I'd love to see what you make. As always, thank you so much for watching, and please have a wonderful day.